Now, another thing I said in the previous lecture is if you have to do some kind of assessment that's specific to your industry, something that maybe the employer has set. So for example, if you're going for a project management role and they want to test your knowledge of different project management situations, you will want to brush up on your project management theory and skills and have a look at your past experiences, etc. Everything we've said in this course. But you might also want to use a large language model like ChatGPT or Gemini to have a look at the breadth of your particular niche. So if you just go to ChatGPT, I'll explain what I mean by this. So I also teach Scrum courses. Scrum is a certain type of project management. Now, let's say that I'm very much deep into the world of Scrum and I've perhaps not been fully aware or fully understand the different alternative project management methodologies out there. So sometimes you don't know what you don't know. So you can come to a large language model like ChatGPT or Gemini and just ask it a question to flesh out the areas that you might not know. I'll demonstrate what I mean. So again, pretend I'm going for a project management role. I'm fairly junior. I've only ever worked in the Scrum environment and I might have heard of other project management methodologies, but I'm not too sure about them. So I might ask a question like this. Okay, I'm applying for a project management role. I only know the Scrum framework. Are there any other project management methodologies I should be aware of? And here we go. So it's starting to populate different methodologies that I might want to look into. Waterfall, Agile, Kanban, Lean, PMBOK, Critical Path Method, Six Sigma. So now I have some understanding of the gaps in my knowledge, and I can go and have a look at each one of these in turn just to brush up on the breadth of this particular area. Again, let's say I'm applying for a role in software testing and I want to know what the basic software testing methodologies are in order to brush up on the foundations of software testing. Now, this is very software related, of course, and project related, but whatever interview you're going for, you might want to just do this just to brush up on some of the fundamental concepts in your industry, because you might get a question on any of these. Say you're very strong in a certain area on your resume and your experience, and then you go to an interview and they ask you something. One of the more experienced interviewers asks you a question about a different methodology or a bit different technique that you might have heard of before, but you don't know much about, or you might never have heard of before, then you're going to feel a little bit stumped and you might even feel a little bit silly not knowing it. Now, some cases that might be fine. I mean, not everybody is the perfect candidate. Not everybody knows everything. But just to alleviate that potential awkwardness and that potential feeling of doom and dread if you get a question like that, it's worth just going over the basics of any kind of industry and just making sure that you understand some of these terminologies, these buzzwords, and understand what they are. And then at least you can say in the interview, you avoid that panic perhaps, and then you can say, okay, yes, I've heard of stress testing. And if you've got a situational based question where they've given you a situation to hypothetically work through, then you've got a chance of answering that because you've actually heard of it and you've done some research on it. Now, you might not be the strongest on stress testing, and you might want to say that in your interview. I know what stress testing is. This is how I would approach it. It's not something I've done much of in the past, but I'm willing to learn more about it. That's a good answer. You know, it's better than just panicking and not really knowing what stress testing is and not really being able to respond to that kind of question. So that's what I mean about using these large language models. You can use a search engine as well. Just make sure you brush up on some of the other areas that you're not as familiar with, because it'll just help you in the interview if they do ask you something that you've not really had much experience with and been involved with.